This is Dan Kinsey. Thank you all for attending today's webinar on our security reporting options for Lawson software. We have a couple of ways that we do reporting. One is more for security administrators and one is for security overview, so maybe auditors or department managers, external audit, where we actually can resolve some of the conflicts that Lawson would have within security if a user has access to a form in more than one way. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into show you how the security reporting works. So this is our primary dashboard for the security reports. Now there's a lot of categories we have here, so a lot of reports. So we of course report on users and how they're defined, their user, their roles, their security classes, what access to what forms they have, what the rules are. We do that of course for all objects, so it can be tables or programs. It can be field level and form level access. And then of course we have role, how the roles are defined, how the security classes are defined, and then we have what we call statistics, which is a mixture of some of the metadata behind the forms, what your function codes mean, what the field names are on each form, that kind of information. So if you have any questions about how Lawson screens are defined or what the available function codes are, you can get that out of those reports. We also do some table associations. So if you have version 9 or version 10, you want to know what tables are associated with certain forms, you can get that information. And then the fifth column, what we call our listener, it's under our activity monitor, is really a different product, but we can capture all the activity that happens within the application for a user. So every form they've gone into, what function code or action they took on that form, what the key to their record was, so if it was an employee ID or a customer ID or a journal number, we know what the user is working on. That's not part of the base security reporting, but when we have that data, and that's another application that's available, we can marry that with some of the security data and tell you where users have access to forms that they're not actually even using those forms. So it's just good information to know if you're trying to tune your security and you got to verify whether or not someone needs access to a form and whether or not you're trying to further restrict that access. So let's look at a couple of ways that we do reporting here. And all these reports work the same way. So the way you're going to see me doing sorting and filtering and grouping is going to be true for all of these reports. So I'm going to start with just the primary report that a lot of our customers like, which is the user role security class form. And I'll go ahead and log in here. So when we build filters, for every primary object that we have on the report, so based primarily on the title, we're going to give you filters on that information. And there's a number of ways I can do that. So I can look for a specific users that start with something, contain a name. I can go to advanced and I get a list of the users. I can hold the control key down. I can select these users that I want on the report, add them in. Of course, I can come over here and do starts with or contain, so I can do some wildcard searching for specific users I'm looking for. I can do the same on the role security classes. So again, we're going to read what's in your database for role descriptions and role names, and I can pull these out here and add them across and report on those. For now, I'm going to go ahead and just report on everything. Now when this data comes back, we're going to populate it in this grid format. You can size these, each individual column. You can show and hide columns, so I can take certain columns off of here if I didn't want to see them. I can resize them easy enough. I can also sort on them by just simply selecting and clicking on the user ID or the role or the security class, whatever it is you want to sort on. And then we can also do what we refer to as grouping. So if I wanted to group this by user, I'm just going to drag it up one column here. And now I have users all grouped up, the users I'm working with. Well, maybe I want to also see it grouped up by role and security class. So now I can see that A. Davis, if I expand this, is assigned to 4 roles. Each of those roles has a certain number of security classes. So financial role has 2. That might not be, maybe something, maybe a 9 here. It has better security class examples. And then I can look at what's in each of these. So if I click on AC budgets, I can see the actual forms that are assigned and the available function code. And if I scroll to the right, I'll see the rule that's assigned for that user into that security class and into that role. So very easy just to get a quick view of what level of access does a user have, what roles are assigned to them, what security classes are inevitably assigned to them, You can actually flatten this model out, so I could just say I want to know the security classes that are assigned to a user. If I take the user out here, take the role out, I have user security class grouping now, and I can see A. Davis has access to 16 security classes. If I expand this, I'll get the full accounting of what role is assigned to, what's the form assigned to it, what's the rule, etc. You can actually further flatten that out. If you're just looking for user form access, I can just group this by form. And now I just say that A. Davis has access to 330 forms. Here they are. Some forms, A. Davis can get access more than one way. So if I look at AC0.1, this user has access through 3 different security classes that are all tied back to one role, and they actually have conflicting rules. So in one case they have inquiry next previous, another they have inquiry, another one they have all. In this case, Lawson's going to give them all access because it's the least restrictive. Now what's also nice about this is I can look at the model upside down, or if I just drag user over here to the right of form, now I can look at my forms and say what users have access to the forms and what kind of permissions do they have. I can also put column filters on this. So if I'm just looking for instance HR forms, let's say HR 11. Now I see HR 11.1. There are 3 users that have access to this form, and if I want to see how this user has access, I'll come down and see it's through HR setup and through a self-service, and through setup they have all access, and through self-service there's a conditional rule, probably just so they can look at only their information. Lawson user would have, there's 4 different ways, and you can see there's also conflicting access over on the right hand side. Squeeze this down a little bit, you'll see the conflicting access over here to the right. So now I can easily just go in and filter on a specific form and see what users have access. If you wanted to completely invert the model, you could go user, you could form, security class, role, user. And again, I could do this on the user name, the security class descriptions. I don't have to actually use the codes themselves. So if I took this filter, let me clear all the filters out here. Now I'm going to come back. I can sort this by, let's sort it by form. I'll click on form. And now I can see AC00.1 is assigned to 3 classes. Now I'm climbing back up the model. AC data entry is assigned to 3 roles, and financial supervisor is assigned to 2 users, and that's H. Rogers security setting. So it's inquiry only for H. Rogers. So again, I can do this on all the reports within our application that we provide. So let me go ahead and close this out and show you how you can also drill between reports. So I started kind of at this highest level. Now you also notice that we have all objects too. So here on the left is users all objects. So now this is where I could pick out, instead of just working on forms, maybe I want to work on element groups or programs or tables. I can select that object type, and I can pull back all tables here and run this report. And now I'm getting users, roles, security classes, and the tables that are assigned. And the same kind of thing now. I can group it by the table name, and I can group it by the user, and I can see how many people have access, and maybe I want the employee file, so I'll put employee, and so here's the employee table. There's 3 users and the level of access they have. If I scroll out to the right, I'll see they have conditional logic or all access, depending again on the security class. So you see that we have a lot of different queries here, and on the left hand side some of these are built specifically for our customers that were requested by auditors. So you'll see things like user active but terminated. So what that's doing is it's saying this user is still set up in Lawson Security, but they've been terminated in Lawson, so they have a termination date and a status. So if you were to run this report, I can again filter by certain dates, I can filter by statuses, and I'll come back and I'm going to get the employee ID, and we have some set up the same here so we could pull some data, and the termination date and their status. Something that auditors quite often will ask for, because they want to know anybody that still has access to your system but has been terminated. Those people ought to be disabled within the application. You also have users active with no employee record. So that'd be somebody like a Kinsey consultant that has access to your system, but they're in fact not an employee of the organization. Another report we've been requested to provide for auditor purposes. There's a couple unique things down here. You'll see users without roles. These are called what we call orphan queries. So on all of these, you'll see in the roles section, we have roles without users, we have roles without security classes. Under security classes, we have unassigned object, unassigned security classes. So if things get built, if you have users that don't have a role, if you have a role that's never been used, if you have a security class that's not been used, we'll identify those so you can decide, am I just going to delete that out of there and clean up my model, or is that something I want to get assigned somewhere? The other things we do are like users here, multiple access. What this is going to tell me is if a user has access to a form more than one way, we have to resolve that conflict because they're going to get the least restrictive access. So in the example I showed earlier, we might have somebody that has full access and they have inquiry only. Well, Lawson's going to give them full access. So what we want to do is we want to identify where we might have that situation. Maybe we only want to look at tokens, maybe we want to look at tables, and I can filter this down and say I only care about tokens, so I can put in TKN here, filter this out, and now I can look at where a user might have access more than one way. So I see A. Davis here has access to AC00.1 three different ways. Over on the right, I see that it's I and P, I, and all access. They're going to get all access. But I can, again, do all my grouping and sorting and filtering here. I can group it by user, then I can group it by object. And I see in A. Davis case, I have a number of objects that this user can get access to more than one way. And I can expand these and always see what role they have. Some of them don't conflict, so it's okay. Some of them are just multiples. And in this case, I have some conditional logic and I have inquiry only. So that conditional rule is going to override that inquiry only rule. But just some of the unique things we put in here, you're not going to get into some of the standard Lawson reporting. You're going to be able to get all your user identities. You're going to get all user groups. You're going to get all the attribute settings. So if you want an employee ID attribute, that kind of information, you can always go in here and run these, pick a particular attribute, or just run everything. And you can sort it by attribute. You can group it by attribute. And I can see, I can look down here at some identity and see what's assigned, what the value is, and what the assignment is for that. So we also drill up and down throughout the model. So if I started at something, let's say I started role security class, and I just want to look at how my roles are defined. Again, same kind of filtering options here. I can pick what I want to work with. In this case, I'll pick all, and I can run this report. So I'm going to get your standard, what you'd expect, a role security class. Again, I can group it by security class and say I want to know all the roles that are assigned to this particular class. Easy to do. I can group it by role and find out what each role has within that as a security class definitions, and I might only have one there. Here I have 10 security classes. Now from here I can do a couple things. If I'm curious on who has the role AC Accountant, I can right click on this, go to user role. We'll open another sheet on the browser and we'll tell you all the users that are assigned to that role. Now this is a new query, so I can now continue to drill down the model. So if I want to know, what's everything that's in this role, I can look at every security class that's in here, and I can continue to drill down and look at every object or just the forms that are assigned to this security class. You'll see that we always give you the available function codes and then the rule is defined, because a lot of cases, like, well, here's a good one right here, all access, you don't know what function codes are necessarily in all access. Sometimes all access doesn't have an add or delete, it's just change and inquiry. So we like to be able to tell you what the available function codes are as well as what the rule is. So I can always back up through the model here by just closing each of these sheets in the browser, and I'm back to where I was here. So I can always drill up or I can drill down through the model regardless of where I start on my queries. So I can start on any of these and do have the same kind of functionality and do the same thing. Now along with this, I can save favorite reports. So if I run a report that I want to run a user role report, maybe you have a department that wants to review their users every quarter and what role assignments they have, I could build this report, and we'll just say I pull out a handful of users here, and I'll run this report, and I'll group it by user. And maybe what I want to do is I want to save this. So I got a nice report here. I'm going to go up to the right hand corner here, and I'm going to hit save, and I'm just going to call this my finance user roles. And we'll give it a description here, and I'll save this report. So if I come back now, let's go back home here. Up in the right hand corner, if I look at, I got a save icon. If I click on the save icon, it will give me a listing of my saved reports. So I have a finance user role saved report here. Now I can just run it from here, which is easy to do, and it pulls in all the parameters that I previously had set up. So I'll click Run Report. And you see there's my filters. I'll run the report. I could change these filters if I wanted. I can add people to it, remove them, resave the report, and it would be saved with the new view. I can also schedule this. So if I right-click on this and tell it to schedule this report, we won't go into how we set up new schedules, but it's very simple to do that. And I can just say I want this run at the end of the week. It's going to run at Saturday at 10 o'clock. I'm going to select an existing email group instead of defining a new one. I want it to go to finance, and I want it either as a PDF or anything 2007 through 2016. And I'll go ahead and save this. And now it's going to have a clock. So now this is going to be a report that's going to get emailed to me on Saturday night at 10 o'clock at night based on the current setup. You could have that go once a quarter, however often you want it to go. It's easy to do. So that's how we save reports. Now, also with this, we can do historical reports. So we have a process back in the administration page that allows you to do, there's a list of tasks. One of the tasks is how we pull this data into our reporting on a nightly basis. So every night we have a scheduled task that will run out, hit your LDAP server, and pull this data over to the database that you have set up for our application. Now our applications install generally on a virtual server within your environment. It's for the most part all open source software, so there's no licensing other than the operating system. So you have to have, if you have one of Windows OS, you can run that. And then we won't, because we don't like to report against LDAP directly, because we don't want to put a burden or a load on your servers. So we pull this once a night. If you want to make changes during the day and you want your reporting updated, you just have to go out to the scheduled tasks that's on the admin panel. We can go out there. If I go to my home page and go to administration, you're going to have scheduled task here. And there's a task down here. It's going to collect right here, LDAP data collection. And it's going to take, it could take 10 or 15 minutes to run. Depends on the size of your model. So I'll go back home here to LS reporting. Now, we also do that for what we call snapshots. So if I wanted to look at a point in time of what my security looked like at the beginning of the year, or maybe every 6 months you want to take a snapshot, so you can always go back and how your security was set. There's no limit to the number of these snapshots you can take. That could also be scheduled, or it can be run on demand. I have a couple out here, so if I want to pick a snapshot, and I'm going to pick the 12/31/15 date, and I'm going to pick this profile. Now what I'm looking at here on the majority of these reports, and some of them, the listener information is always going to be current. Some of the user active but terminated, that data is not always going to be historical because I don't have your employee file from back on 12/31/15. But all the other queries are going to be as the data existed in your security model at that point in time. So if I want to know what user roles or what user role security classes a user was assigned back on 12/31/15, I have all the same filtering capabilities that we've seen before, and I can run this report, and I'm going to get how that security was set up back then. So if there's ever a question, did that person ever have access to that, or what level of access do they have, you can go back and always run these historical reports. Now, with that, we can also compare it to those reports. So there's nothing other than the fact that you can now select that server and pick what profile and what date and timestamp you want. It runs just like all of our other reports. If I go back to my current reporting, and I'll pick my profile, and you notice here I can pick environment, the gen profile, the Logan profile. You can report on any of those. Primarily, people want to report against their token profile, which is how their users are set up. So now I'm looking at my current security again. Well, maybe what I really want to do is I had a change to my security classes, or I want to see if there are any change to my security classes. I can run a historical report here and compare it back to a point in time, and it's going to give me a report on how is it different now from what it was then. So what I'm seeing here is on these security classes, I've added specific forms, and these are the rules. If I continue to scroll down here, I see there's some deletions, and then there's some changes. Like all the other reports, I could group this into this certain category, and we'll look at these changes, and I see the rule has changed on some of these forms for specific security classes. Scroll out to the right, I'll see the columns with a C are current, columns with an H are historical, and I can see the differences between what it was at that point in time back in December of 2015 and what it's set to now. Now this isn't really an auditing report, so we're not telling you who did this change, when was this change made. We can do that with our security audit product, and I could go back and tell you exactly when that change was made, who made that change, what it was before, and what it was changed to. Because I'm comparing here like over a year old, it could have been changed 2 or 3 times. I'm just showing you what it was then and what it was now. Security audit would tell you everything that's happened in between, when it was done and who did it. But I can do this type of comparison on virtually every report I have out here. Again, there's some things we can't do, the multiple access, the termination things, those are not going to be comparison reports. But the majority of your standard reports are going to be all comparable. Now I'll go into this user rule. You also might have noticed that was a way to compare historical. I can also compare profiles. So what we've done here is if you have your test profile and your test environment, or whatever the profile is, and you want to move information over to your production system, so you've gone through your testing, you're trying to figure out in production, why is it not performing the same way it was performing in your test environment, you can compare these profiles across servers. So I'm on production APS, and maybe I want to compare to my test server and a different profile. So it doesn't matter if what the profiles I want to compare or what servers I want to compare. I can compare 2 profiles on the same server. I can compare the same profile on 2 different servers, and we'll tell you, just like we did in the comparison report, what's the difference between those 2. So maybe there's a user you forgot to assign a role to. You can compare the user role from test to the user role in development, and we'll pop out and tell you where the difference is on those settings. So just some nice tools that we've provided there that allow you to do some comparison reporting across not only historical reporting but also on the profile side. So, but that about covers everything we're doing here. So we saw our schedule reports. Obviously, the reports you can export. If I just go into a security class form, up in the right-hand corner, you'll see that I have the option to print this to the printer. I can export to Excel. I can export to a PDF. I can save the report. All of our help is available here. That's what the icons at the top do. But that gives you a pretty good idea here, without me going through every query, of kind of how this works. And you can see there's like 40 different reports here that we provide in the first 4 columns. Now the other type of reporting we do, let me go back to the home page, it's called a security analyzer. So this is built more for people that don't know a lot about Lawson security. They know what forms are critical to them. They know what users they need to review, and they want a tool they can use it in that's intuitive to them. So we built this in Excel. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this out, and I'll explain to you how this works as I'm running one here. So I'll go ahead and run this financial users report. So while this is generating, one of the big differences on this is that I only have the ability here to select what users I want on the report. I can't filter out any data for a user. So auditors get uncomfortable, understandably, when you provide a reporting tool that allows somebody to select their filters. So on our other reports that I showed you, if I did a user role, security class, and form report, I actually could filter out things like specific roles. I could pick the users and take some of the roles out of the query, and it wouldn't necessarily be a full, accurate picture of everything that user has access to. We don't allow that to happen here. We only allow you to determine what users you want on the report, but we'll tell you everything about those users. When you see these columns here, you see a role column. What that allows me to do is determine what users I want on the report. So it's every user that might have the role AC accountant, or it's every user might have a combination of these 3 roles. I'm going to determine what users have those and build them in my user list. When the report runs, I won't just get those roles, I'll get everything for the users assigned. Now what's nice about that is if you save that report and it's based on role selections, over time, as you add and remove people from those role assignments, the list on the right of users dynamically grows and shrinks. So every time I go in to run a saved report, we'll requery who has access to the roles that are pre-selected, and you'll get a report for all those people, even if they hadn't been saved originally. The other way then, of course, is just to set the users that you want, so there may be 5 users you always want to have on this report, and if you wanted 6, you'd have to edit the report and add the user. So let me go ahead and show you what this report looks like. Get rid of some things on my screen there. So let me scroll this up. You'll see, first off, you're going to see the users here, and you're going to see all the roles assigned to them in the column above them. So the users I want, we put side by side. Now there's a lot of sheets down here. This is actually looking at categories. What I'm going to come over here, I'm going to look at tables, or I'm sorry, tokens. So let's look at the tokens here. So if I scroll this down, you'll see I'm just in Excel. Here are the users. But I'm going to go up here and I'm going to shrink this column. I have all their roles that are listed above them, but I have the users listed right here. So I'm just regular Excel here. So now I can freeze panes here. I can come here and I can go to the data view and I can add filters. So now I can look at maybe just particular system codes. Maybe I want to look at HR or I want to look at GL. I can do that. But what we're going to put in these columns is the security access that user is going to get. So A. Davis on AC00.1 gets all access. You'll see over here on the left I have a plus mark. So we do grouping. So if I wanted to know how do they get access to that and how do we determine that, if I expand the plus, I'm going to see all the roles and security classes that this form is attached to, and then how those users actually have access. So I can see B. Thomas here has a lot of different ways that they actually can get to this form. The least restrictive is all access. Same thing here. So this user has an inquiry next previous, an inquiry, and an all access. While their least restrictive is all access, that's what they're going to get. If they have conditional logic on this, we're always going to show conditions. So here's an example of that right here. We'll show you the condition. There's another tab at the bottom of this. It's a report, a sheet that'll have all the conditions that are on that, who's assigned those conditions, so you can get the detail out in a more readable format than just the note. But you'll see here is a token condition down here that I can actually go back, and it references the cell back to where it was on this report, the token report, of what user has that, what role and what security class it's assigned to. So I can, if I can just scroll down here now, and if you're an auditor and you're looking for a particular form that you're concerned about, maybe you're looking at the HR. So I just want to pick HR, and maybe I want to go down to HR 11, and I want to see who has access. All I have to, everybody knows how to use Excel. So now I can go straight across the page, and I can see these users have no access to HR 11. Lawson user has all access. You want to know how? You simply expand them. Plus, and you'll see where it's set up, what roles, what security classes, and what Lawson's assignments are. And they have multiples here. And in one case, it's inquiry and M only, but the all access, of course, overrides it. So we're doing that here you're seeing your programs are here, your tables are here. What level of access is kind of hard to see because it takes up so much room here. But you see your table level access. There's a lot of information here. If you wanted a sample of this, we of course could send you just a sample. But like this, I could send you the spreadsheet, and you could look through everything to see how we do this. This is all sample data, but we could kind of give you an idea of how this is defined and how this works. But now you can provide this information to somebody that doesn't have to have access to the reporting tool. They don't have to have a login to our application. You can just export this as you could any other report. But this is easier for people to understand. And again, the important thing is we resolve the conflict, so we tell you what level they're going to get, and we don't allow you to filter anything out. So you know the users, every form they have access to is going to be on this report. Also, we can produce this straight to PDF. So in many cases, an auditor may say, we don't want it to go through Excel because you could manipulate the data potentially. So we'll just provide it both ways. We'll give them the Excel version so they can scroll around, look at the different sheets, they can use the grouping, and we'll give them the PDF version so they can confirm that nothing has been changed, but then at least they can navigate and look at things and use things, but use the PDF version as the actual audit document. So that's what this report is actually doing. You can, again, save reports, do that kind of thing, and edit them as you want. We don't schedule these. These are all run on demand, but you can save up as many as you want. But that pretty much covers what we're doing with reporting. Now, we did a webinar 2 weeks ago that covered the other applications. So on our website, if you go to, I could probably go there, go to Kinsey.com. You'll see all kinds of information on our products. And up here on the right, you're going to see the webinar that we did 2 weeks ago that was the security dashboard. So we actually there covered how security auditing works, our monitoring tool, our transaction auditing tool, segregation of duties, all these other applications we discussed on that webinar. So you could look at that recorded session and get an idea of what we're doing here on some of the other applications. But for security reporting, it's primarily these two, security reporting and security analyzer, that we just went into. So certainly feel free to give us a call if you have any questions. We'll have this posted on the website so everybody can kind of share it with their team. And if you would like a demo just to your company or just to your team, we're happy to do that anytime. So I'll jump on and we'll spend 45 minutes going over specific questions or problems you're trying to resolve and see if we can help you there. Thank you.